The betting scandal deepens. Newsnight's been told that up to 15 Conservative candidates and officials are being scrutinised. Hello, welcome to Newsnight for your weeknightly interviews and insight. Let me introduce you to our political panel for this evening. We've got Claire Ainsley, former head of policy for Sir Keir Starmer. Henry Hill is here. He's the acting editor of the Tory website Conservative Home. Plus, Dal Babu, a former chief superintendent in the Metropolitan Police. And Nick is here as always. And Nick, the betting scandal has widened today. And here at Newsnight, we have new revelations to bring to our audience this evening. I've been looking at this and learned of a series of developments in both the Conservative Party and the Labour Party. And in our investigation, I found that up to 15 Conservative Party candidates and officials are being scrutinised for alleged betting on the timing of the election. I've also learned that Craig Williams, the former close aide to Rishi Sunak, who lost his party's support today, is expected to be interviewed this week by Gambling Commission officials. And the Labour Party made a mistake in its raffle for party supporters. So what are these organisations saying in response?
Well, Vic, the Conservative Party, what they're saying to us is their standard statement, which is that they are cooperating with the Gambling Commission. They're unable to comment on how many candidates or officials may have been approached by the Gambling Commission. And they say, we're really hearing there's a very simple reason for that, is that there is only one named person in any political party who is allowed to deal with the Gambling Commission, and they are not allowed to tell anyone, including colleagues in their party, about what they may or may not have happened. So what happens is that the Gambling Commission would approach that named person and they would say, is candidate A or is official B on your payroll? Is it one of yours? And they'll say yes, or they'll say no. They'll provide their details. And then the Gambling Commission will go and approach that person. And they would then say, you're under investigation. The party then doesn't hear anymore. But what is interesting about that is at the time that the Gambling Commission do that, they have to notify the police. And what's interesting is that Tory sources are saying all these names are coming to them when they are approached by journalists, which is why you saw that story in the Daily Telegraph today saying that there is a belief in the Conservative Party that the police are leaking those names, firmly denied by the police. The Labour Party are admitting that they did make a mistake. They believe it's a very minor mistake on their raffle. This is open to members of the party over the age of 18 to raise funds for the party. And what they're saying is that in the terms and conditions for that raffle, they did say that you could enter it for free. That should have been repeated in the cover letter that went out, and it wasn't. And so they agreed with the Gambling Commission that was a mistake. And so they sent an email out to party members making clear that absolutely you can do this for free. OK, and it's been quite a dramatic day, actually. Yes. Various developments today. Yes, Vic, so quite a few developments. So should we just run through them? So firstly, the Conservative Party withdrew its support from two candidates. These are the two candidates we knew were being looked into by the Gambling Commission. A lot of criticism of the Prime Minister that he was not doing anything about it. So both Craig Williams, who's the candidate in Montgomeryshire and Glyndwr, and Laura Saunders, the candidate in Bristol North West, they are being looked into by the Gambling Commission. I should say that there is a full list of candidates in those constituencies on the BBC website. Then this evening, we learnt that a Conservative member of the Welsh Senedd who sits for the same area as Craig Williams stood down from the Conservative shadow front bench after being informed that he too is facing an investigation. That's Russell George, and he is saying that he will cooperate fully with that inquiry. And then earlier this evening, Labour suspended its parliamentary candidate, Kevin Craig, after being told that the Gambling Commission had launched an investigation into him. Now, Mr Craig wrote on X that he put a bet on the Tories to win the seat that he's contesting, and he said his intention, he did this some time ago, was to give any winnings to local charities. OK, it doesn't end there. I've also learned that Craig Williams, the former close aide to Rishi Sunak, who lost his party's support today, is expected to be interviewed this week by Gambling Commission officials. Now, Mr Williams posted a video today to voters, and here's a clip.
I committed an error of judgment, not an offence, and I want to reiterate my apology directly to you. I'm fully cooperating with routine inquiries for the Gambling Commission, and I intend to clear my name. In all these things, due process is important, and that is what sets the UK apart from other countries, and the Commission must be allowed to do its work.
And in terms of the Commission doing its work, there is expected to be a meeting on Friday between the Gambling Commission and the Metropolitan Police about one of Rishi Sunak's close protection officers who was arrested last week and placed on restrictive duties over claims of election betting. The officer was arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. There are many strands to this. Some seem incredibly serious, potentially using inside information, some less so. So how do we distinguish between the strands?
Well, on that raffle thing for the Labour Party, they believe that that was minor, and their impression is that the Gambling Commission regarded it as minor because they did get the right message in the terms and conditions that you could do it for free, but it just wasn't in the cover letter, and they have dealt with it. On the bets, we are basically talking about two sorts of bets. One set of bets that seem to be pretty problematic for people who may have placed them, another set that are not so problematic. So the first ones that are problematic is those people who allegedly placed a bet on a July election around about the times that I was learning it was getting into the waters of Westminster in May. So the Gambling Commission is looking at anyone who placed a bet that would have yielded a win of 199 or above, place that bet on a July election in May. That could be problematic because that is potentially based on insider information. The second set of bets are not so legally problematic. So Kevin Craig, the Labour candidate, who did what many candidates do, started out the campaign and went, I think I'm a pretty hopeless cause in this place, I'll place a bet. That wasn't based, I imagine he would argue, on inside intelligence, but given the climate we're in, the Labour Party has decided to suspend him. And then there's the case of Alistair Jack, who is the Scotland Secretary in Rishi Sunak's cabinet. Now, Alistair Jack has been sort of going around joking that he'd placed a bet and had made quite a bit of money on it. And our very good colleague Joe Pike sort of put this to Alistair Jack, and he sort of said, I haven't done anything wrong. As I understand it, in Conservative circles, Alistair Jack put £5 in March at 25 to 1 on a summer election. Now, Alistair Jack is saying that he's not under investigation and he hasn't done anything wrong, because what the Gambling Commission is doing is looking at bets that were placed in May, around about the time the Prime Minister made his decision. Alistair Jack's bet was in March. And what appears to have happened is it's an open secret at Westminster that Alistair Jack has thought for a long time that there should be a summer election. And what he appeared to be doing is, this is my view about what should happen. I'm going to place a bet. No inside knowledge.
OK. Phew. There's a lot to absorb, isn't there? It's probably an issue that's going to come up tomorrow evening in the last debate of the election campaign, with Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer going head-to-head in Nottingham. They will be answering voters' questions and making their arguments for why they should be the next UK Prime Minister. So that is the Prime Ministerial debate tomorrow evening from 8:15 with Michelle on BBC One and on iPlayer. Right, let's talk now to former Metropolitan Police Chief Superintendent Dal Babu and our panellists Claire Ainsley and Henry Hill. Right, so there's a lot to take in. Your reaction, first of all, Dal Babu. Does it tell us anything about the political and police class in this country or not?
Well, I'm exhausted listening to Nick's summary. I mean, there's a huge amount that's happened. I think this is about trust. It goes to the heart of trust. And the two organisations that struggle with getting trust back are politicians and the police. And we've seen a very, very different response to allegations made against a police officer, which has resulted in an arrest and interviewing that individual. And we've had Rishi Sunak dragged kicking and screaming to relinquish his support for candidates. I think that says a lot about how individuals are treating these incidents. But these are serious incidents because it's about trust, and that lack of trust. The Met is on a journey. The Metropolitan Police is on a journey to try and retrieve trust. And I think this will be a massive knock to that journey.
Well, let's remember, innocent until proven guilty. There's a long way to go. I mean, Rishi Sunak and his ministers who have been defending the fact that they were still supporting those two candidates, even up to last night on Newsnight with Gillian Keegan, was saying there's due process. Conservative Party has launched its own inquiry. They were telling us yesterday for the first time, and today they're saying we've gone through that due process. We've checked with the Why are you laughing?
Just the way you're summarising it is accurate, but quite bleak, you know.
Oh right, okay. So I thought you were laughing at their defence of it. They say they checked with the Gambling Commission today. It's not going to, impeach on their investigation. That's why they've come to this conclusion of withdrawing the support. Do you buy that?
I mean, I suppose I can't disprove it. I mean, I would say that basically what's happened is the pressure has got intolerable. And we've seen time and again, unfortunately, with Rishi Sunak as with Boris Johnson, there was a clear thing to do here, politically speaking, which was withdraw support immediately. And if it turns out that they clear their names, then wonderful. You can say if Craig is elected and he clears his name, we will welcome him back into the party with open arms. But for now, we're going to withdraw support. And there is always this tension with when politicians are being investigated, because they don't sometimes get the sort of due process protection that you would get if you were a normal employee in a normal job, right? The political parties are under pressure to act, but that's politics. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the job of a political party is to maintain the public's confidence. And that does sometimes mean that you have to treat someone slightly brutally and withdraw support in the middle of an election, because that's your job as Prime Minister. And speaking to Conservative activists and campaigners up and down the country, they're absolutely furious, because there was already no love lost between them and the leadership in the Central Party already, with the surprise election and everything else. And now all of these people who have been giving up their weekends and their evenings to try and return Conservative MPs have found out that some of the people at the very top of CCHQ have been spiving for a tiny amount, to these tawdry bets. They're absolutely livid. Conservative activists are furious.
Claire Ainsley, did Keir Starmer do the right thing in booting Kevin Craig out today?
He took really quick and decisive action, and it is in contrast, as Henry says, to the way that Sunak took some time to come to a decision that most of us would have thought you'd have taken really on the get-go. We're in the middle of an election. In a week's time, the party's going to have to put forward these as their candidates or not. You don't have time to waste in these sorts of circumstances. So I think it told us a lot.
What rules did Kevin Craig break? What did he do wrong?
I think well, again, these are all allegations, but let's say hypothetically somebody bet against themselves.
Well, that's what he says. I mean, I'll read you he's put it on X.
If he bet against himself, and this isn't in politics, what you're doing is you're asking activists to go out every weekend, every evening, a party puts you forward as their candidate. You cannot have a conflict of interest where you bet against yourself. That seems to me to be pretty obvious that you can't do that. Whether it's against rules or against law, this is about a conflict of interest. And frankly, if it was any other walk of life, somebody would have been suspended immediately.
Throughout my life, this is Kevin Craig, throughout my life I've enjoyed the odd bet for fun, whether on politics or horses. A few weeks ago, when I thought I would never win this seat, I put a bet on the Tories to win here with the intention of giving any winnings to local charities. While I did not place this bet with any prior knowledge of the outcome, this was a huge mistake for which I apologise unreservedly. Do you think Keir Starmer did the right thing?
Politically, yeah, absolutely. Right. You have to control the story. Sometimes politics is a brutal business. Am I actually concerned about this bet? No. If this were a close race and there were evidence that he were trying to throw it, turning himself into the Gambling Commission, for example, that would be one thing. But this is, everyone knows what this is. This is just an emotional hedge, right? He's got the thankless task of being a candidate for a few weeks, and you place a contrary bet. But Starmer did the right thing, because in politics you have to act decisively, because what matters is not just the action, but the context in which the action is playing out. And if there is a gambling story dominating an election, that matters.
Vic, I should just tell you something interesting has just come in on my phone. I should firstly apologise to our wonderful panellists that I was looking at my phone.
No, that's what your phones are there for.
Very rude of me, but what we said just over there has sparked a bit of a row. So a Labour source has been in touch with me and saying that the Conservatives are being completely disingenuous in saying that they're not able to comment in any shape or form, because they, the Labour Party, were told by the Gambling Commission that once official notice had been released, once the official notice of investigation had gone to the individual, in their case it was Kevin Craig, once that had happened, then you could talk about it publicly. So the Labour view is what we were reporting over there as the Conservative view. They're saying, as far as the Labour Party is concerned, that's disingenuous.
What were you going to say?
Well, I just think for politicians to bet, whether it's against the law, Section 42 of the Gambling Act makes it unlawful if you're cheating. But whether you're actually cheating, whether you're doing something unlawful, strictly in view of the law, it's a bad look when politicians are betting for themselves or against each other. It smells, it stinks, and I think the whole.
It depends on your point of view. I mean, I don't want to be flippant, but how far do you take it? Are you saying they can't bet on the national? Are you saying they just can't?
No,
politicians can't
Victoria,
bet?
I'm talking about the elections.
Right. Okay. Political bets.
This is about the integrity of the election system. We're at a time when people have low levels of trust in politicians, and we have a situation where people are either betting for themselves or others, or there must be some information that people have been privy to when you've had such a huge spike in bets for July the 4th. So I think that it doesn't smell right, it doesn't look right, and I think the public will be outraged to see that politicians are doing this. So no matter what excuse they make.
I do think we need to distinguish, though, that the original scandal, the really problematic bets, is that it was basically insider trading, right? There were people who got access to privileged information and then used that to make a bet, which is illegal on top of everything else. But I think the idea of an allegation, but if they did it, that's one thing. But I think the idea of spreading that out to, if you're a no-hope candidate and you put a bet on yourself at 50 to 1, like, is that a problem?
Henry, if you were a sportsman, if you were a sportswoman, and you were involved in a boxing match or something, and you were going to get a spanking, and you decided you'd bet against yourself, that'd be unlawful.
I don't think it's comparable, because an election is ultimately not in your control. You can throw a boxing match yourself, right? But if you are voting on, if it's a contest that you're not particularly involved in, or if you had somebody who won a surprise by-election and they put a bet on themselves to win it, I just don't think that's a problem. It hasn't created a misalignment of incentives. They've not used insider information. I don't think that's a problem, and I think we shouldn't take a genuine, serious allegation and turn it into a broader, slightly hazy moral panic.
Sure.
I think that is part of the issue. I think it's right to be so careful in the way that this is being reported. There is clearly a difference between some of the allegations that have been made and the one that you used, for example, about the raffle. Like, there is clearly a difference between those things. And we don't want, when we have trust in politics so low, to try and tarnish everybody with the same brush here. There is clearly an issue that has originated. I have to say, on this one, it is the Conservatives on this one, and it is Sunak that has failed to act quickly enough. So if you look at it from the perspective of voters, that's what they're going to be worried about, not about the generalised issue, which we have to be careful not to get into.
I'm going to remind you about Azhar Ali, of course, the Labour candidate in Rochdale, who was not suspended immediately after comments emerged that he had blamed Israel for the October the 7th attacks. And again, there was a by-election coming up, and in fact, Lisa Nandy was out campaigning with him on the Sunday when the story emerged on the Saturday. By the Monday, people were out on the airwaves, Labour people defending him. By Monday afternoon, he had gone. That's
right. That did take 2 days or with the course of that weekend to play through. But I think it is right to be able to hold our election candidates to that kind of standard. But I just think the idea that the voters don't care about this, I think it just feeds this whole sense.
I mean, we're getting loads of WhatsApps.
Yeah.
And there are some people who are really cross about it. And there are others saying, for goodness sake, cost of living, NHS, etc., etc. And just to say, we talk about those issues every single night on Newsnight. This happens to be the story today. We've got new information which we're bringing to our audience exclusively. But yeah, not everyone is bothered about it.
I travelled here in a taxi today. The taxi driver said to me, "This is shocking." He says, these people, they've got loads of money. They're not like us, struggling to make a living. He says, I finish work at 2 o'clock in the morning. He says, these people are doing it for little bits of money. And it's shocking. So, that's one individual who feels very, very angry. And I'm sure that's...
Michael Gove made a similar point in the Sunday Times at the weekend, didn't he? He drew parallels with Partygate. This perception that there's one rule for one lot of people and one rule for the rest of us.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's the Conservatives' own fault, right? Yeah, ultimately that this has dominated the media coverage for this long, because Rishi Sunak could have acted a lot faster. This was actually potentially an opportunity for him to show leadership, to draw that line and be the leader who took action, and instead, just like Boris Johnson before him, he failed to act. He ended up looking like he was being forced to act. And as a result, this story has dragged on for, a week now at this point? And this is the point of the campaign at which, even just by default, it should be getting slightly easier on the Tories. They're so far behind. Press attention would naturally start shifting towards what Labour are going to do in government. Farage had crossed over, more scrutiny for Farage. And instead, they've kept the spotlight on themselves in the worst possible way. And whilst obviously the Prime Minister has nothing to do with any of the allegations, his failure to act is the reason that this has played out as long as it has.
OK. Thank you. Stay with us. Not that you're going anywhere. We're going to have a word with Sir Alistair Graham now, who was chairman of the Committee on Standards in Public Life between 2004 to 2007. Thank you for talking to our audience, Sir Alistair Graham. First of all, how do you assess what's going on here?
Well, I think it's pretty poor behaviour, particularly when you've got what were senior public servants clearly taking advantage of inside information if the allegations turn out to be true, and also for the candidates as well. If they're seeking to be public officials as members of Parliament, of course they have to abide by the 7 principles of public life that were known as the Nolan Principles, and which one of the key principles is that you put public interest before personal gain. And we seem to have some examples, how many we don't really know, where in fact people have put personal gain before the wider public interest of the position of the government, the position of the political party that they support. And I agree with one of your panellists that this is in danger of further undermining trust in British politics, and that's a very potentially dangerous situation, because if you lose this trust in politics, as we've seen right across Europe now, you tend to get a move to extreme politics, and that's something we certainly don't need in this country.
When you say if we lose trust in politics, I mean, from your experience, when you look at certain politicians' behaviour over the years, where does this rank?
Well, I don't think it's quite as serious as, say, the expenses scandal that we had a few years ago. But I think the worry is that it confirms people's suspicions at the moment that they can't trust politicians and they're all out for personal gain rather than looking for the broader public interest. And if that gets deeply held by large numbers of people, that's not good for our country.
Right. So what's the solution? Just people generally behaving better, or banning politicians making political bets?
Well, I don't know about the betting, what the rules need to be in relation to that, but let's face it, if you're a senior public servant, you've had all the Partygate type issues, you don't need very strong antennae to tell you that it would be particularly stupid to place a bet on the date of the election. But there are massive proposals that have been put forward by my old committee, the Committee on Standards in Public Life, which have gone to the Prime Minister, and I think hardly any of them have been introduced. They would put a whole number of the current arrangements on a statutory basis. And of course, the Prime Minister could have given the ministerial advisor on standards discretion to open investigations himself. A lot of people pressed him to do that. He didn't do it because he's not taken the issue of public standards seriously. And he may well pay a heavy price for that in this election.
Thank you very much, Sir Alistair Graham. Thank you. We've had a response, I think, Nick, have we, from the Gambling Commission?
That's right, Vic. So they're saying, as a spokesperson for the Gambling Commission, they're saying the Gambling Commission regulates gambling in the interests of consumers and the wider public. Currently, the Commission is investigating the possibility of offences concerning the date of the election. This is an ongoing investigation and the Commission cannot provide any further details at this time. And finally, they're saying we are not confirming or denying the identity of any individuals involved in this investigation.
Let's have a look at tomorrow's front pages. Front page of the Daily Mail leads with an exclusive interview, they say, with Sir Keir Starmer. Their headline, Mail readers were right about Labour in 2019. That's why we've changed. And then at the top, another bore draw, but at least England topped the group. Brackets, and avoid the Germans. Is anyone here an England supporter?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I managed to watch the first half. I'm actually glad I'm here and didn't have to watch the second half.
OK. Daily Telegraph Cabinet Minister claimed he won 2K on election bet. That's Joe Pike's story. And a big picture of Julian Assange. The same picture on the front page of The Guardian as well. He's essentially released under a US plea deal. Their main story is fifth Tory faces investigation as election betting scandal grows. And again, England do just enough with a picture of Harry Kane wiping the sweat from his brow. Daily Express, Farage, the UK must end funding France until the small boats are halted. The Mirror will end the 8 a.m. GP scramble. That's a pledge on doctors from Keir Starmer and his shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting. And The Times, Labour man suspended for betting on the election. And there is Prince Charles welcoming the Emperor of Japan on the first day of a state visit. Do you care who England plays next in the Euros?
Well, I'm glad it's not Germany. I think I'm an Arsenal supporter, so I'm used to disappointment. But I hope that they are now settled and they'll do well in the next stages. So.
Well, let's see. I mean, there were boos from the England supporters tonight. They won the group. I'm just looking at the positives. They won the group, 1 win, 2 draws. It means England go into the better half of the draw, i.e. no Spain, France or Germany.
And briefly, just to say, Vic, I think people will really love to see that picture of King Charles with the Emperor of Japan.
What did I
on
say?
the state visit.
Did I get his name wrong?
King Charles.
What did I say?
Prince Charles.
Oh, my word. It's just old habits die hard. And you were all so polite. Yeah, goodness, I'm just, yeah. Thank you for picking me up on that. Right, what's going to happen if the media continue investigating candidates and whether they've placed political bets on? It is our job, but could we get to a point, Claire Ainsley, where, you know, we're talking dozens of candidates get kicked out over the next week?
I think we've got to get it in perspective, and as you said in your opener, there is a difference between what has happened here, where there's clearly a vested financial interest that's gone on, or potentially a break of the law, and other practice where people either haven't followed particular rules. There has to be a decision taken. It isn't just a blanket, they're all at it, because I don't believe that that is where the public are at. They want to see these issues dealt with, but they don't want them generalised in that way.
But you know, Vic, Tory sources are saying that Keir Starmer has set a very low bar, and the candidate that came up because they're looking at all bets in May, and you know, this is not insider, this is just a candidate voting on their chances, and that's popped up. So what else might pop up?
Yeah, well, that's what we'll see over the next few days. Is it going to be a problem?
Well, I think the thing is that there's no reason that I can immediately think of for the Gambling Commission to start investigating this. Apparently this came up sort of as a fluke. If they did for any reason, this is, as I understand it, I don't know for sure, like fairly standard practice. Like lots of people place little bets on themselves as candidates in the election. And so this is where I think you've got the danger of, one, if the allegations are true, very serious story about inside betting, turning into potentially quite a silly moral panic, where you've got potentially dozens of candidates who've done nothing wrong, they haven't broken any rules, they've placed a little flutter on themselves, and then based on the precedent that Keir Starmer has set, we end up suspending them by the score, potentially, depending on how many come up. And that would be a deeply unfortunate result. I don't think that would help it wouldn't help democracy, it wouldn't be fair on the candidates, it wouldn't be fair for public trust in politics. So we do need to be careful. It's good to have those razor instincts if it's one guy.
But will we look at the practice which has, I believe, happened in the past, parties or party in by-elections, where you go and place quite big bets on a particular candidate that gets them up in the betting stakes, and then you can say, aren't we doing well?
Yes.
That is a practice that I believe has happened in the past.
Well, I think your guest, Alistair, made the point that I think lots. I appreciate, I'm not a politician, but I appreciate that and some people are trying to downplay this, but I think there is exactly what Nick says, there's an opportunity for people to manipulate the proper voting system. And I find it very, very troubling that people who you want to go into public office are betting. It sounds very sordid. It just doesn't seem right. It doesn't test. It looks wrong. It looks wrong. And I think a lot of people will feel that way. And I think Sir Alistair was right. You know, these are people who are wanting to go into public life. They should be at the most high standards, and that's not happening.
Gambling isn't illegal.
I mean, everything that you've just said then applies to the police as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the police. I wouldn't defend the police.
But I was just saying, gambling is not illegal, right?
Yeah.
This This is they're not.
But the idea that
and they haven't. But we're talking explicitly about people on the second question, this Labour candidate. We're talking about people who haven't broken the rules, and it's all very well to say, oh, maybe it doesn't pass the smell test. But I do think that we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to look at things a bit more closely. If it turns out that someone's betting, and that betting can actually turn out on closer scrutiny to be absolutely fine, that we should have the.
But do you need a law though
to do that?
No, we just need to be. Do we need to be just grown up?
The alleged criminal conduct here is already illegal, and it is being investigated.
OK, thank you. We're out of time. Thank you very much. Thank you. Kirsty, see you tomorrow. Thanks for your company. Have a good rest of the evening. What's left of it?